President-elect Trump rips into a civil rights icon and America's intelligence community, and it's stirring the pot just before he takes office.
The world is watching now what Mr. Trump says and listening very carefully.
Meanwhile, Trump says he wants health care for everyone. So we'll ask Republican Congressman Dennis Ross how that would work and what it would cost. Plus, we'll explain how President Obama failed to unite, why things got worse, and what Trump can learn from it.
It's one of the few regrets of my presidency that the rancor and suspicion between the parties has gotten worse instead of better.
This is Money, Power, and Politics.
And so, Marissa, while Russia meddled in our election to help Trump win, Trump won for a combination of other reasons. And so he takes a lot of offense at being called illegitimate.
And that started the feud with John Lewis, with both sides pointing fingers at the other.
So let's start first with a closer look at Lewis's hit on Trump and Trump's counterpunch that delivered some blowback.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
One of the nation's most respected civil rights leaders claims the next president is not legitimate as the nation's first biracial president leaves the White House, provoking the next president to attack a civil rights icon on MLK weekend.
If he's going to respond to everyone who expresses themselves critically about him, he's going to wear himself out. Because as president of the United States, he's got to have a strong backbone.
Well, as President-elect Trump sees it, he has a strong backbone, which he displays by always punching back. And so when Congressman John Lewis said he doesn't see Trump as legitimate because Russia meddled in our election to help him win, Trump's team hit back as they always do.
It's shocking that Congressman Lewis, who is a civil rights icon and is a person who's championed voting rights, would actually question the legitimacy of an election in this country.
But Trump got a lot of backlash on this because of how he punched back. First, he attacked Lewis's district by claiming it's in horrible shape and falling apart. Lewis's 5th congressional district in Georgia covers some of the most affluent parts of Atlanta, including downtown, which is taking off on a rapidly growing film industry. And since Trump's attack on Atlanta, people in the district have flooded social media with pictures showing the parts that are not falling apart. And some are sarcastically marking themselves as safe in Atlanta's 5th congressional district. The district does have a higher than average poverty, unemployment, and crime rate, as do many large cities. But the crime rate has been going down for a while, and the city is on the upswing.
When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something, to say something, and not be quiet.
And Trump is also getting blowback for the way he attacked Lewis. He tweeted, "All talk, 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 no action or results, sad." Lewis helped lead the March on Washington in 1963 and sit-ins and nonviolent protests across the South that helped end segregation. He was one of the original Freedom Riders who was beaten, got a skull fractured, in fact, on the march in Selma. On this MLK Day, Lewis was the keynote speaker at events in Miami.
The future leader of the world, we must never, ever hate. The way of love is a better way.
Meanwhile, the president-elect has also taken some hard swings at our intelligence community. This has been going on for a while, even compared it to Nazi Germany because he suspects it leaks what he calls fake news on him.
And outgoing CIA Director John Brennan pushed back and said Trump needs to be more careful with his words.
The world is watching now what Mr. Trump says and listening very carefully. If he doesn't have confidence in the intelligence community, what signal does that send to our partners and allies as well as our adversaries? And I think he has to recognize that his words do have impact, and they can have very positive impact, or they can be undercutting of our national security.
On the health care front, Mr. Trump now is promising a replacement for Obamacare that can provide health care, Marissa, for everyone.
And he let us in on some of the details of how he plans to do it.
Majority voting in the affirmative, the concurrent resolution is agreed to.
The Republicans' plan to revamp health care in America is still one very much in the works. Over the weekend, President-elect Trump drew a clearer picture of it. He told the Washington Post he's going to have insurance for everybody. We do know that Obamacare, as we know it now, will be no more. The act of repealing and replacing it, President-elect Trump says, will happen simultaneously.
Will most likely be on the same day or the same week, but probably the same day, could be the same hour. So we're going to do repeal and replace. Very complicated stuff.
Mr. Trump also told the paper that his plan includes much lower deductibles, which contrasts the rising ones we see now with the Affordable Care Act. He wants drug companies to negotiate on both Medicare and Medicaid prices, too.
As long as you don't diminish the number of people covered, reduce the benefit package, and increase the cost, as long as you don't do damage to Medicare and Medicaid, let's talk.
The transition from Obamacare to the new plan should be one that's made carefully. If not, it could leave 20 million people without health insurance. 18% of voters say they want a full repeal of the Affordable Care Act, according to a Quinnipiac poll released last week. 47% want to see just parts of it repealed. 31% say they wouldn't change a thing. Without a specific replacement plan, both the Senate and the House approved a budget resolutions last week for it. The initial steps of undoing the Affordable Care Act.
This is a rescue mission. This is a necessary move, and I urge all of our colleagues to do what is right, because the time is urgent. And on top of this, to my colleagues, we need to keep our promise that we made to the American people, and this helps us do just that.
Okay, let's bring in Tampa Bay Republican Congressman Dennis Ross. Mr. Ross, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Craig.
Let's start with Obamacare.
Yep.
The president-elect says that he wants to keep the popular provisions. He wants to make sure everyone is covered. Question to you, how do we pay for that?
Well, first of all, I agree with the president-elect on that. And that's something that we learned from Obamacare is we need to make sure we take care of pre-existing conditions, that there are affordable policies out there, that those that are on their policies under 26 stay on the policies with their parents. The way we do pay for this, quite frankly, is you open up a market. You know, this is the only demand-driven economy that's failing. We'll block grant Medicaid so that we take care of the indigent by way of their state systems. We're going to make sure that Medicare stays solvent and takes care of those who are on it. And those in the middle that are the working class that are trying to get policies will have affordability and accessibility to their policies because there's going to be a multitude of competition. Add to that increased health savings accounts where you can put away pre-tax dollars for over-the-counter medication. People will manage their health care better. It is a process that's not perfect, but it's much better than where we were, and it involves the consumer dealing directly with the doctor.
I know you've got strong qualms about Congressman Lewis questioning the legitimacy of the president-elect. What, though, do you think of the president responding the way he did by attacking Lewis's district?
You know, there might be a lot to be said there. Look, one of the things that turned out in this elections were the inner cities turned out for Hillary Clinton. The rest of the country, from east to west and north to south, the rural areas all turned out for Donald Trump. And I think that's indicative of the fact that we've had so much government involved in the inner cities that have led to failed programs, dependency. We want to help these people get up. We want to help these people find their opportunities. We want to help them start businesses, create jobs. And I think what Donald Trump is speaking of is the inner cities of Atlanta have taken steps back. Inner cities in New York have taken steps back. Inner cities in Chicago and Los Angeles have taken steps back because there's been too much government involvement. I think his tweets to that regard are something that we need to take to heart. What we need to do through Ben Carson, through who will be the new Housing and Urban Development Director, we've got to incentivize people to want to get away from government dependency, get out there and create jobs and be part of a future that this country has given so many generations before them. I understand that there's a lot of tension out there. Our country needs to come together, and unity is going to be very important. It pains me to see John Lewis that way. I think the world of that man. He's an icon for civil rights, and hopefully we'll get the acceptance and be together strong as a country again.
Congressman Ross, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Craig.
And thanks to the both of you. Coming up, we'll break down one of President Obama's biggest failures. We'll explain why he could not unite the country as he hoped. After
E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
We don't need more heat, we need more light. This is the moment. This is our time. We will change the course of history.
Is the same partisan spectacle that only hardens the disdain many Americans have towards their own government. The time for bickering is over. We are better than this.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent
object.
to revise my remarks.
I object. I object.
I object. Both sides of
I object.
the aisle.
I object.
Object.
And the hardest thing to change in politics is a stubborn status quo. But you can't give in to that cynicism. Do not let them win. Don't get cynical. It's one of the few regrets of my presidency that the rancor and suspicion between the parties has gotten worse instead of better.
And so the president just said that he's very proud of his track record on the economy, on security, education, and on the environment, but he failed to bring our country together as he had planned.
And that's one of the president's biggest regrets. He could not break the partisan fever in Washington.
And to understand what Trump is now up against, you need to look back at what went wrong for President Obama.
My presence on this stage is pretty unlikely.
12 years ago, a self-described skinny kid with a funny name came out of nowhere with a call for unity.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
But now President Obama admits that we're more divided than we were before.
It's one of the few regrets of my presidency that the rancor and suspicion between the parties has gotten worse instead of better.
How did that happen?
You just be quiet.
Well, at least three things polarized our nation. First, the growing influence of money in politics pulled our federal lawmakers apart. They spent more time raising money elsewhere and less time getting to know one another in Washington, and gridlock set in.
Career politicians, they're like pigs feeding at the trough.
Then, number two, voters overcorrected. As they tried to run the pigs from the trough, they pushed out experienced deal makers and replaced them with mavericks who promised change.
We will not compromise.
But the more they promised, the less they changed, and the art of compromise was lost. Both parties lost one of their wings along the way and pulled to the right and to the left. And that brings us to the third big thing that divided us.
In America, you have a right to be stupid.
We call it the Kerry Doctrine. Dysfunction causes blunders that makes government look divided and foolish.
Since I'm in charge, obviously we screwed it up.
And with all the problems that have come to light within the bureaucracy and all of the bickering in plain view, faith in our government is near an all-time low. This naturally breeds distrust and anger that we see here in Florida in state and federal government.
Vote these people out.
And frustration and stupidity drove a mutiny against the establishments of both parties with Sanders and Trump won it all.
The president once said there are no red states or blue states, but research shows the American people have shifted more to the left and more to the right, and they see our government as failing us. And President Obama says he cannot fix it as he once hoped, because real hope and change must come from within.
It's not enough just to change a congressman or change a senator or even change a president.
You watch a sonogram at a 15-week baby, and they have movements that are purposeful. If they're a male baby, they may have their hand between their legs. I mean, they feel pleasure.
I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball, and that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
You can believe NASA, or you can believe the senator with the snowball.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more you drink, the more this will make sense to you.
Not sure how much sense it can ever make. And so Trump is walking into this mess, Marissa, in Washington, and the comics are having a field day with it right now, and of course him as well.
Yeah, but Mr. Trump, he's not finding it too funny when the comics make fun of him. So here's his reaction to the parody from this weekend. He tweeted, NBC News is bad, but Saturday Night Live is the worst of NBC. Not funny, cast is terrible, always a complete hit job, really bad television.
And with this, he was referring to SNL satirizing unsubstantiated claims that he did some lurid things with Russian prostitutes, which Trump says is absolutely false. But here's how SNL got under his skin.
I'm an American journalist, Wolf Blitzer. Are you sure Russia was behind hacking?
I mean, maybe.
But are you really sure?
It was China.
And that drove a very strong reaction from Trump and his team that may get more intense between SNL and the president in the coming weeks. But coming up, Trump, of course, got the last laugh in the election. And the Democrats, Marissa, are still reeling.
Yep, and we'll show you how the Democrats are trying to regroup after the break.
So certainly Democrats crashed in 2016, and now they're, of course, licking their wounds.
And they're working on a plan to try to bounce back, and they spent this weekend in Phoenix. Fox's Courtney Griffin shows us how they plan to change it.
DNC members got together today to discuss how to rebuild their party. DNC Chair Donna Brazile kicked off the forum. Alexis Tamarone, Arizona State Chair, says several candidates are running for positions.
But at this point in time, what we need to do is focus on how we're going to actually build a party that's going to be back in power in the next 2, 4, 6, 8 years.
With the highest position being DNC chair.
Over the last 8 years, we've lost some offices, a record number of offices, and I think we have to get back to the fundamentals of campaigning.
Several DNC members arrived in Phoenix yesterday to hear all they can before voting for new party leaders come February.
We have to listen to what people are saying and hope we pick somebody that follows through.
Staffers say one thing is for certain: as the party moves forward, they need to unite.
We have to speak as one voice. We need to recognize that there are more things that we have in common that divide us.
Now, Democrats lost the White House by neglecting the Rust Belt, and Trump's promise to bring back jobs from Mexico played a big part in his victory.
Democrats, of course, have been here a time or two before. You go back to what happened after the caucus in 1988. They were smashed, and they picked up the pieces 4 years later with Bill Clinton, and they focused on the economy and jobs. Remember, it was the economy, stupid. That was the mantra. And with this, they had a compelling message of what he was for. They connected with voters at the time, not just that the other guy is bad, but a positive alternative. Bet that they're trying to go back to that model as we speak and trying to implement it in the midterms, Marissa, in a couple of years.
And coming up, we will see how Trump's call for a wall is already driving a hot debate. And other walls right here in the United States. We'll show you where after the break.
So, of course, the president-elect, then the president, Trump, on Friday will spell out his vision, what he wants to accomplish in his first 100 days. He's stressing that he will build the wall. Mexico will pay for it, will fund it up front, and take it from there. That will be a hot-button issue, therefore, in the first 100 days. But
there's already a wall.
There's already a wall.
A miniature wall.
A miniature wall, sort of.
Outside of Detroit, there is a wall that a guy built. His name is Dan Bean. He built this just smaller, was it out of snow or something like that?
Out of snow with spray paint. Here you go. Here it is in his own words. Here's what he's got to say about this.
I've done sculptures before, but I'm more of a political junkie. I started building about 5 days ago, and then it got pretty warm out, so it started melting. So it's been about 5 days of repair, waiting for some nice cold weather. Everybody's been great about it. Just get honks when people riding by. One guy rode by on his bicycle shaking his head, so I assume he's a liberal. But I'm going to watch it tonight, and I'm going to put lights on it to make sure that it makes it through the night.
So it's a brick wall.
Yeah.
It's not really that
made
tall.
out of snow.
Yeah.
No. But what's striking is just how much work Mr. Bean put into this, and it speaks to the enthusiasm and just how fired up Trump's base has been and will continue to be. So while Trump is caught up in a good deal of controversy and has many detractors,
still got a lot of fans
the
out there.
effort you see here shows how those fans delivered for him in a very big way in 2016 and will continue to carry water for him in 2017. Folks, that's our show, and we will see you again tomorrow night. Take care.
Good night.